to the Living Farms podcast, the place where we discuss biodynamic practices worldwide for you, your farm, and the planet. So, welcome to the Living Farms podcast. Today we have somebody very special with us, Annette Mueller. She's working for, I hope I pronounce it correctly, Fattoria La Vialla in Italy. They are one of the big Demeter producing biodynamic food farms, and they're very good in marketing. So we are going to talk about how biodynamics can be marketed and produced for the consumers and how the consumers can be involved. So thank you, Annette, for joining.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
So give us a little bit of guidance of what you're doing currently and why you decided to join the biodynamic movement.
Okay, so that's like a huge question. So basically, we are a farm and wine estate, and we're located in Tuscany in the area around Arezzo, which is kind of in the middle of Tuscany. And we are a farm that, or I guess what makes us special. So we obviously practice biodynamic farming, but we also produce everything then. So we transform, so we grow our vegetables, fruits, vineyards, olive groves, and then we obviously transform them, then we package them, and then we do direct sales to the end consumer. And so the farm started out, actually this April, we just had our 45th anniversary. So it's quite special and incredible. And what is interesting is that the farm didn't start out as this big organic biodynamic farm, but it really was born out of a love project. So we're still a family-run farm, and the founders, so to speak, Piero and Giuliana Lofranco, in 1978, they basically fell in love with an old farmhouse, which was abandoned. And their idea then was to simply have a place where they could teach their children, how to do a little bit of farming on the weekends. They both had a background also in the family of farming. Their grandmothers on both sides also had a farm, but they actually did something completely different. They came from the textile industry. But so their idea was that since they grew up in the summers on the farms of their grandmothers, they just wanted to pass that down to their children. And so they bought the farm, they started to renovate it. And as they were renovating, they realized, there's a lot of abandoned land. There are sheep that nobody was taking care of, because you do have to envision that starting in the late 60s, but continuing into the 70s, there were a lot of abandoned farmlands in Italy, all over Italy, because people had decided to stop farming and move into the cities. And so, they realized, okay, so we do want to do a little bit of olive oil. We do want to do some wine. We want to make pecorino sheep's cheese. And so they started. And then as they were starting to do this for their own family, they realized that there were more parcels that were available, and also more farmhouses that were completely abandoned. And so they slowly added one farmhouse with a little bit of land, another farmhouse. And then they started as an agriturismo. So it was just for guests. So they started receiving guests. And from there, the guests were arriving, and so they were producing their own oil, their own sheep cheese and wine. And people said, but this is so wonderful. I would love to have that at home. And so they said, okay, we could do that. And so at the beginning, they literally had a list of people that wanted to have their product, and they would drive with a small rickety van, in this case, mostly to Germany, because the first guests were German. So that was a coincidence. And started to deliver hand by hand. So they would drive to the people's homes and actually really bring them their goods. And so from there, it kind of changed. And in terms of farming, so they would have never, from the beginning, La Vialla was an organic farm, as in they would have never used any kind of pesticides or synthetic fertilizers, simply because in their idea, why would you want to poison your land? You want to live off it. So would like to have it in good shape. And that was also something that was, even their grandmothers, though they wouldn't consider it organic farming, they wouldn't use any kind of pesticides or organic farmers. And then in the at the end of the 90s, it was actually, I guess it was more of a logical step to start with biodynamic farming, just because as they were getting more and more into the farming aspects, they realized that there's so much more that you can do. And they met François Bouchon. And so with him, they started to transform La Vialla into a biodynamic farm. And then we had the first demeter certification in 2005. And but started actually the whole biodynamic process at the end of the 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a long way. I mean, I assume it was not so easy to.
No, I mean, there's a lot of, and I think that's one aspect which I actually also love about working with Fattoria La Vialla is the fact that it is a lot of trial and error, to remain open and to listen, and I think that's really what makes it so special in a way, that they don't have a preconceived concept of how something has to work, but they really look at the land. And for them, it was clear. I mean, it was not just to do farming, but it was also the aspect of preserving the cultural heritage. I mean, it was clear that they obviously in Tuscany, the main aspects are olive groves and vineyards, but for them to really move into the fact that a farm has to be a whole working organism. So they did have the sheep, but we also added some chickens. We added vegetable patches. We have some orchards, just to really be able to work in a circular fashion and to really always look at how can we close the cycle. So for example, with the sheep, I mean, obviously we use them for the milk that we need for the pecorino cheese. And we also use the lambs for the meat that we serve in the agriturismo, but we also need the manure for our compost. And then, of course, the sheep also have a very important role in terms of regenerating the soil. So, one in the pastures, but also, for example, once the vegetable patches are harvested, they always get their own little Thanksgiving by, moving them over the tomato fields, basil fields, and so forth. And that way, kind of with their hoofs, they kind of massage the soil, and then their droppings again add to the soil. And I think that's what makes it so alive, because I think that is what's really, I mean, people always say, oh, how do you do it? How is it possible to do biodynamic farming on such a large scale? Because we do have, all in all, about 2,000 hectares. However, from those 1,000 hectares are actually woodland. So we do have quite a bit of forest, which we're very happy about, because, I mean, the two main aspects that we really are most focused on are really biodiversity and soil fertility. And actually, it's kind of funny because right now we have an ornithologist one of our guests is an ornithologist. He actually came last year and is now back this year because he was so fascinated, because within a week he found over 90 species of different birds, and even there you can see that, well, of course, it's great to have all these birds, but those birds couldn't be existing if it wasn't for the soil, which is alive and filled with microorganisms, which then, produce insects that then can feed the birds. Yeah. And so, and I think that is what's so fascinating about biodynamic farming, that you never just look at one aspect of it, but you always look at the whole. And I think it's also such a great way in terms of using it also for your life, to just always, I mean, one of the first podcasts, it was on perception. And I think it is one of the aspects to really, what is it that we perceive, and how do we perceive, and how open are we to perceive different things. And there's a certain amount of awareness. And I think, I mean, my background isn't in agriculture, but I have a background in arts and counseling. But I think nature is such an incredible teacher. And to really see how, if you have the ability, or let's say the trust, because I think it requires a lot of trust to just say, okay, let's do this. We don't know whether it's going to work. Everybody, because I mean, at the end of the 90s, everybody was thinking the Lofrancos are crazy. And still today, I mean, a lot of people do not understand biodynamic farming, because I mean, when you start talking about, yes, and we bury cow horns, and and we work with the moon cycle and the planetary movements and so forth. People kind of look at you and are like, but then they see the results, and so they do understand that maybe it can't be scientifically proven, but obviously there is a result. And so I think this aspect of trust is really important, and the aspect to just and I always like to kind of like a cultivated insecurity. You have to, you never know what's going to happen, and especially with climate change, things are becoming more difficult, simply because they've become so unpredictable. So, maybe before you did have these nice and neat cycles, and you knew, okay, something can always go wrong, but you kind of knew, I mean, in March, the weather will be, kind of rainy, it will start to get warm, and then April warm, and then you'll have a nice spring. And now for the past 5 years or even longer, I mean, we always have this drop in temperature in April and also May. And the winter is actually quite dry. And so that really, you really have to work with them. How do I organize my planting season?
And it's, for me, so fascinating to see at the farms that are already practicing biodynamics for quite some time, that they're, especially with those changes, better off than compared to farms that are not focusing on diversity and soil health, as you said, but like the biodynamic farms that practice soil cultivation and soil health for such a long time, they're often much more able to adapt to the changes of the climate. But I assume that's a different different
conversation. No, but what we do see, and I think, because I mean, I'm not. I always have a problem when there's this like conventional farmers bashing going on. I do have a deep respect for them, and I mean, they made their choices, and a lot of times I think there's also so much lobby involved in it. But what we do see is the fact that, okay, so we don't have much in way of, once we have a problem in a vineyard or in the vegetable fields or in the olive grove, I mean, it's very difficult to kind of deal with it, because everything we do, I mean, you can also only try and prevent something to happen, But the one aspect that we did see, that in the very difficult years, for example, 2014 in Tuscany, especially in Chianti, because we also are in the Chianti region, it was a very difficult wine year. And what we did see is that our vineyards were just more resilient than the conventionally farmed vineyards. And so I think it is an aspect, because if you don't focus on the culture itself, or the crop itself, but you focus on the whole organism, and you try and keep that in balance, the actual plant can really take care of itself, or has more possibilities to kind of fend off certain, it's sort of like as if their immune system, kind of to use that term, is just better capable of fending off certain diseases. And you can see that also in terms of the nutritional value of what it is that we produce. For example, we do have our olive oil has naturally more polyphenols than, for example, a conventional olive oil, simply because the secondary plant substances that are there to fend off pests. I mean, the olive, if you bite into it from the tree, it's terribly bitter. And that is a way for the olive tree kind of to avoid that the olive fruits are being eaten, And but those polyphenols then are actually also very good for our health. And so Yeah. And so there's so many different connections that I think it would be so worthwhile to have more maybe regenerative agriculture, because to me, biodynamic farming obviously is part of the regenerative agriculture, and it does have so many different aspects that do help, I think, also focusing on how it is that we want to be in the world.
Yeah, definitely. I have a good friend, Rasa, in Lithuania. Maybe some of the listeners will know her, and she always said biodynamics. For practicing biodynamics, you have to become a professor of life, and I just love that expression,
Yeah.
because it shows so much, as you said, like when you start with such a farm out of nowhere, and maybe you're also not trained in agriculture, then you really need to get your way through and get to learn and read nature and understand how the things are connected and what your role as a human being is. And
Yeah.
I just love that aspect so much. And I mean, you just mentioned it shortly, but you're concentrating at Fattoria La Vialla mainly on products which are having a very good quality, or at least the things I tasted were having a very good quality. So how do you get the customers integrated into this understanding of this really holistic approach? Do they get it, or do
Well,
they just taste it?
it really, I mean, again, what I love, and again, in a way, also our all our customers and clients are very diverse, so we have really a broad range, from people that, just like our stuff because it's good and tasty, to, very health conscious, holistic people that do deeply care also the way it is produced. And where we're lucky is that we work without any kind of intermediaries. So it's really, we do everything literally ourselves. So, we farm the land, then we transform the fruits, and then we package, and then we actually ship ourselves. So we have a direct end consumer contact, which has slowly grown. I mean, it's not like we started and we had, thousands of clients. I mean, this is like everything grew very organically. I mean, we didn't start out with 2,000 hectares. Each year, with each step, something was added, and I think that is really, it's incredibly valuable to be able to communicate directly with the end consumer, because they're our clients, and in a way they're our friends, because we do a lot of communication, also still print communication, where we actually each month there's like a little booklet. 2 times a year there's bigger books where we actually also communicate what's going on the farm, and so always maybe highlighting one aspect, and so slowly people do understand if they care, and then a lot of times if they have a question, they write directly to us. It's really funny because they will always let us know if we do something that they think is wonderful, but if we do something that they think is really, not so great, they will also let us know. And so in a way, the same connection or a similar connection that we have with nature, we also actually have with our clients. In a way, they're almost our friends, because we have literally people that have been with La Vialla or coming to La Vialla and then ordering from La Vialla for 35 years. So in a way, they saw us also grow up kind of, and it's invaluable. And then the other aspect is really that because of the agriturismo, we also have the possibility that people can come and stay on the farm. We have farmhouses where you can stay for a week and really experience nature. So in the farmhouses, it's very the idea was to really renovate them and restore them in a way that they don't lose their farm character. So they're literally, there are farmhouses, the windows aren't greatly insulated, there's little specks so that you really can perceive nature. and there's no Wi-Fi, there's no TV. There's just a whole lot of nature. And then also we do get day guests that come because we have a transparent production area where you can see how we make the things that we make. And so a lot of times people will just come for a day and do a little tour of the farm and then maybe have lunch. And I think that's important to really show people how you do the things you do. And in terms of, part of the tour is also the aspect of biodynamic agriculture. And so people do get a sense of how you can do it or how it is done. So, but there's never any kind of, so I think what I appreciated, so, in terms of the spiritual aspect, we remain very much on the practical side. And then when people have follow-up questions or are more open to it, then we can always go deeper. But so again, we try to listen of what everybody wants to experience in a way.
And what are typical questions of the customers?
I think a lot of times people don't, or depending on from where they are from, I think a lot of people kind of have lost touch with nature or what it is or what it takes to grow, a kilo of tomatoes or what it takes to make a liter of olive oil. And I think to see it and the amount of work that is put into it and the amount of care and dedication and also the amount of risk, because, until you have the olives harvested in the olive mill, you never know. No matter how hard you work, in the last week, something can go completely wrong and you're left without a harvest. And I think it makes them appreciate more, not just the quality of the products, but also the amount of work that goes into it and also the thinking behind it that, okay, a liter of olive oil, impossible that it can cost €3 for being extra virgin olive oil. If it's the case, then something has to be wrong in the chain, of how it was, either, I don't know, either they're not organic olives or they're not Italian olives, or whoever harvested them was not paid correctly, or somewhere in that link, in that chain of becoming olive oil, there is a problem. And I think that's very valuable for people to really understand more the background of how something is made, obviously in agriculture, but in many aspects. And I think people are becoming more aware and more conscious and do ask more questions and maybe sometimes don't like the answers, but but it does make them more aware, because I think the actual change can only happen if we as a whole, changed the way we see things and the way we act in the world,
I just remember you once had I found it very innovative marketing. So I just love, as you said, you have those books that you publish and that is sent to the customers, and you have a lot of information out there. And I don't know when it was exactly, but one time I think you sent olive trees to the customers, and it was such a nice way because you received the small olive tree, and then you had an instruction of how you should take care of this tree. And I just remember I sat down with my mom, because she's a fan and customer of yours as well, and we were sitting there and read the instruction. We're like, oh gosh, that's like kind of a lot of work to deal with such an olive tree. So you really honored what you're doing there as a guardian, so to say, of the trees, and we are just in the luxury of ordering the products then. So that was, for me, very nice to get into an experience in a, let's say, a little bit pressured way, because you received this tree and then you thought like, okay, now I have to deal with it. It's like, but you were forced to connect yourself with nature in a very, I found, innovative and friendly way, because you gave guidance to the people how to take care.
One time we also sent preparation 500. so the menorah horn. So in a small little vial with the instruction how you can make it. We got a lot of emails from, wow, this is like hard work. I mean, we did it, and I mean, we stirred it for an hour, and wow, and we used it, and it's great. But I had somebody who said, "Oh, but you know, your new sauce is very earthy tasting." They ate it.
Okay. Can happen. Wow, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I think that we can do because we are in touch with the end consumer, and we do these things, because I think it is really important to connect people to what, especially when you live in a city. I mean, to really connect people to what is part of us. I mean, in the end, we are, part of nature, and we will go back to nature, and to really see how the cycles are, and yeah.
And also with your products, I mean, I have the feeling, but I want to check with you, that also the products are in a way a cycle of products. So you have the olives, you have the olive oil, but you also have the shampoo, and you have different products that are also closing a cycle of production. I think that's so valuable, because then nothing is wasted.
So yeah, exactly. So we really try to look at, as I said in the beginning, to always close the cycle, and just nature doesn't produce any kind of waste, and to take that really as an example to look at how can we also avoid producing waste. And so one thing, as you mentioned, so during olive harvest, when we make the olive oil, there was always in the process at the end, you have the olive oil, but also, let's call it olive fruit water, or vegetation water, which remains at the end at the last time when you centrifuge it. And so before, we always had to compost the olive fruit water in a very elaborate way. And the great grandmothers of the three brothers that are now, La Vialla is in the second generation. So it's the three brothers now that are running La Vialla. Their great grandmother, Nonna Caterina, she actually drank the water during the olive harvest, when they were making olive oil. And it's really, I mean, I tried it once, and it's very bitter. So everybody was like, this is really horrible. I don't know why you're drinking it. And she's like, no, I don't know. It's good for me. And so years later, Johnny, the oldest of the three brothers, he just kind of had this thing and said, why was she drinking it? And maybe we should, look at, what's in it. And so they did that, and they realized that actually the water has 20 times more polyphenols than the actual olive oil, because most of the polyphenols are water soluble. So they end up actually in the water, which you then throw away. And so we found these various scientists, one that had actually created a machine which through reverse osmosis first cleans the olive water and then concentrates it. And then at the end, you have the concentrated olive fruit water and ultra pure water. And then with that, we had it checked again, and it was incredible in terms of the polyphenols that were contained. And it's really a cocktail of so many natural sources that we actually developed a natural supplement. Polyphenolia, it's called. And then we were trying to do some research with it. We got in touch with scientists, and one of our clients actually read one of the studies, and he wrote to us and he said, I read the study and the way it works on the cells, I think it would be also a very good skincare product. Then we were like, well, we don't know. We're farmers, and the olefinolia, the natural supplement, we can produce ourselves, but we can't produce cosmetics. But so, we started a conversation, and in the end, we decided to start with also a skincare line and also shampoo. Actually this year we created a Demeter certified sun cream, which is on the basis of olefinolia. things like that. And it's really interesting because at the end, something that was a waste product actually has become an incredible resource. So this idea of upcycling, I think, is really, well, it's taken from nature in a way, and yeah, it's fascinating. It really is fascinating.
And again, you see the contact to the customers. That's
Yeah.
great. I mean, if you are in contact with your customers, then you can receive this kind of feedback. And I think often as farmers, we're putting ourselves so much into pressure of being innovative by ourselves and having all of these ideas, but listening to the customers that use it, the products is often a good way, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's valuable. So now we'll see what else we can come up with. But yeah, it's a great guiding principle, not to always look at how. That's another aspect I really love about Fattoria La Vialla, is the aspect of how can we do better. How can we make things just more sustainable. I mean, we started tracking our carbon footprint already in 2008. And it was really fascinating to see that, even though, I mean, obviously we're doing biodynamic farming still, I mean, what our output was, and then to really work on the aspects and become more and more climate positive.
Where was this initiative coming from? Was it from employees or, again, customers? Or?
Yeah, well, it started that, with the whole climate discussion, we just asked ourselves, well, I mean, how is it, that what is our impact in this world? I mean, obviously you always think, oh, we only have positive impact in this world. But, it's good to check. And so we did check and saw that, for example, in terms of, obviously for us, the most is the packaging and the transport. But also to see, a glass bottle, okay, glass is obviously an incredible resource. But, the weight of the glass can really influence a lot. And so we decided, okay, we will make lighter glass bottles, and then you have to check, okay, if they get too light, then they burst, So, I mean, there's a lot of research and trial and error again, but to always see, how can we do better? Right now we're looking into how could we recycle the bottles, but it's too complicated. We have not found an answer to that. But I think that being so inquisitive and really asking questions, or not being afraid of asking questions, is such an incredible resource. Because yes, maybe you don't have an answer, but maybe somebody else has an answer, and in a way you create this energy of putting something out there, and if you remain open, and then something will come back, and will offer you a solution. And I think, again, it's really one of the amazing aspects of La Vialla.
So how did you
confidence?
Sorry?
To have that confidence,
Yeah. So how do you do this with new employees and the people around you to get yourself out there and still be, let's say, integrative in a way? Because, I mean, you're huge, as you said now, I think, also for Italian perspectives. You're quite a large firm. And producing, I mean, you're vivid, I would say, as I can perceive it from the outside. You seem to be quite vivid. And how do you manage if new people are coming into your system of your organism on farm and the social organism, so to say? How do you manage to integrate them?
So in a way, obviously, people are attracted. I mean, it's either a lot of people say, I would like to know more about it. And then in terms of our employees, we do, internal training, so that really, I mean, we do take a lot of time of explaining everything and all the different aspects. And it's a continuous thing also. There's always updates for people to participate in. And then what I have found, it's kind of in a way, if it's a fit, people stay for a very long time. I mean, most of our employees are here we have a lot of employees that are there more than 20 years. And if it's not a fit, people actually leave quite quickly, and so again, in a way, it's like this natural process of people coming, and if they feel attracted and then do the work and realize, okay, well, I love this, or if they say, well, this is really not for me. What's going to be interesting is kind of, because obviously since we have a lot of employees that have been working with us for the past 20-25 years, is when there will be this generational change, how that's what we're looking at right now, how to attract more younger people to really, especially in terms of the farm work, the agricultural aspect, to really have young people that are interested in it, which right now we're doing quite well, but yeah, it remains to be seen. But I think there's in Italy, but I think in a way globally, there is this whole movement of young people that are really starting to be more interested in, such a cliche saying, but in a way it's true, going back to nature, to really have this aspect of being more in the natural world, which, I mean, to me, it's kind of an obvious reaction to everything becoming more and more digitally prone, and to have this idea of connection, because in a way, because of the way we live now, a lot of times you don't have this connection anymore, and that's one of the things. If you work in nature, you start forming a connection, because it's impossible not to.
And it's great if they can test it. When you said that they can just come for a week, let's say, to see how it feels, and if your processes are quite transparent and open to visit, and I mean, you're also transparent with the books as well, to describe your situation and to describe your farm. So yeah.
But I mean, a lot of times people, with our guests, so during olive harvest and also during the wine harvest, we do for like a couple of hours, people, our house guests, and not the day guests, but the house guests can come and help us with the harvest. And it's always really sweet to see, that you're, oh yes, I want to do this, I want to harvest olives, and then they start, and after 2 hours, they're like, oh, this is actually hard work. I mean, you have to take a break. But it's one of those things. They will never consume olive oil the same way, and I think that's what makes it so special. So we also think it's important also, just in schools and with young people to really instill this on them, and have community gardens and have school gardens to really teach them also, what it means to work with your hand, and not just with your head.
And I mean, it's such a different thing if you have done this. You appreciate food in a whole new way if you know how hard it is to cultivate it. I mean, that's definitely a thing, And that's one thing which I really enjoy about Waldorf education, is that you have this mandatory, I don't know how it is in Italy, but I think it's a worldwide thing that you have to do agriculture practice during your school. I mean, that's so valuable, And then you feel like really bad if you wasted some food.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's another discussion, people always say, oh, I mean, organic agriculture couldn't, feed the world, and it's just not true, I mean, if you just look at how much food is wasted, if you stop wasting the food, I mean, it would be no problem at all, And so, yeah.
There's a great study from Annette Mueller et al., and they actually calculated it, and you're exactly right. Like, if we would reduce our food waste, I mean, we are wasting 30% of our food currently globally. And of course, not everything of this is avoidable, because sometimes it's just a production loss. But when you're doing a different kind of perspective to also change this production patterns, as you said now, to really think in cycles, then also this can be reduced quite drastically. Yeah. Yeah, great. I mean, if we're talking about the future right now, like what would you say are the hindering factors for biodynamics in Italy right now, and what the future could look like if they're to be overcome?
What we found, we also have a small family foundation, the Franco Family Foundation, and basically one of their main focuses is one to really find abandoned land, and if possible lease it and try to convert it to biodynamic agriculture, but also to help other farmers that are interested in first obviously turning into organic farming and then possibly biodynamic farming. And there we have found that the step from organic farming to biodynamic farming for a lot of people is quite steep. And we don't know how to help them more, kind of, to turn into biodynamic farming, because I think in a way it has to be probably also an inner process. Sometimes I think in terms of the communication of biodynamic agriculture, sometimes I think it's maybe not as practical as it could be for people to, to approach it. So we try to make it very practical. I think the whole discussion on regenerative agriculture is actually helping biodynamic farming, and opening up new ways, because you can also maybe combine it with some permaculture, but then again, for me, it's also in a way sometimes difficult to gauge it, because obviously we are kind of in a bubble, and so we do things and meet incredible people, but they're already doing the things that we're also doing or are interested in it. But I think this whole idea of the value of nature, I think it could be so much more promoted. The fact that I do love the true cost accounting, where you really look at that a biodynamic or also an organic farmer, but I think in this case really a biodynamic farmer so much more creates and a common good for the whole, because they create spaces, natural spaces, protect the environment in a way that a conventional farmer, for example, does not. And this part, and then another thing is definitely policy. I mean, in Italy and as in Germany, it's very difficult to being subsidies or having any kind of support, especially for smaller farmers. I think it becomes, the reason why we became so large is also because certain investments you can only make if you have a certain size, But we do realize then also, because you made that investment, and all of a sudden, it's a funny story. I mean, in terms of the production we made for Christmas, so we do gift hampers for Christmas season, and we made these chocolate truffles with our cookies, and we have like a chocolate spread and so forth. And in the beginning we would dip each one individually in the chocolate, which of course it's an incredible amount of work. And then we got a small machine where you could do like 3, and then at the end we got a bigger machine to do more at one time. But then all of a sudden, okay, now we had to do chocolate covered hazelnuts chocolate, because you made an investment and you kind of have to get the most out of it. And so yeah, but I think, I don't know, like a fund or something where people can also tinge, especially during when they are converting and they do have a loss, because that's what a lot of people fear. Oh, but how will I cover those 2-3 years where my output will be so much less, Yeah. So I think it's also a matter of policy.
Yeah.
Or the fact that, if you look at the fact that pesticide drift, which is like why is it that the organic or biodynamic farmer is the one that has to be accountable for what ends up in his field from 3,000 kilometers away, and the loss is completely theirs, and but there's a lot of aspects that I think should be addressed also on a policy level.
And again, it's just an impression or a feeling, so please correct me if I'm mistaken, but I have the feeling as you have this close collaboration or partnership even, you said, with the customers, things like true cost accounting, where you really include the real costs of a food, so to say, or a product, is getting possible. And I think the understanding of what the value of a certain product is more closer than when you don't have this connection with the customers.
Definitely, but also we do try to have. That's a reason why we only sell in boxes of a certain, 4, 6, sometimes 2, but mostly 4 and 6. One, because that way we can reduce the costs. Secondly, it's also more, it's one thing if you order, 3 boxes of something in terms of the transporting than just one bottle of oil, and one sauce. And then also in terms of the, how do you call it now? I can't think of it. Best before date, it's for us, it's a lot. I mean, we never, and that's one of the things that I'm personally very proud of. We never throw anything away in terms of, because it went bad, One, because of the way with the boxes, it's a lot easier to manage. And then 2, of course, whenever we have products that are getting too much, we can use them internally in the agriturismo. And so we really avoid food waste completely, which is amazing, for medium large company in a way, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So at the end of the podcast, I'm looking at the time now, although I would love to chat further with you. I'm always asking the podcast guests, like, what are your top 3 reasons to continue working for the biodynamic movement and make everything that you do possible to join for others?
Well, one is really my deep love of nature, and really the fact that I think it is one of the ways that we can make a difference, and really for the next generations. I do think, I don't know. I mean, I have children, and my children will have children, and there's the saying, you always plan for the next 7th generation, and you look at how will what I do today impact the 7th generation to come. And I think that's such an incredible guiding line, because I often think how unfair it is that, people, the kids that are 10 years, 5 years, 15 years old today, they cannot vote, but the way we are acting today has an incredible impact on them in the future. And so that is one, or the main reason, why I think it's such an accessible way also. And then the next thing, I think it's just it's all connected. I mean, the way we live on this earth, the way we consume, is, I don't know, I just find it a very alive way of being in this world. And I always realize when I'm at Fattoria La Vialla, on the grounds, I mean, it has such an amazing energy, and to preserve something like that, and to give something like that to other people to experience, it's really incredible. Sometimes you have guests and then they arrive and you're really unhappy, for the first day or 2 because the roads are bad and the house, maybe it rains and it rains inside, or there's insects, there are insects, there are wasps and there are ants and whatnot, But then to see how transformative it is to be actually in an environment like that. And I often feel like, what kind of a world do I want to be in? And that's the world I want to be in. And so for me, there's no question to try and continue to put the word out there, to really continue to work and support where possible.
Wow.
Where they sleep.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I think the people that are listening to the podcast now, they can buy your products. If they're too far away, then they can taste a little bit of Italy, biodynamic Italy.
I think you can taste it. I don't.
Yeah, you definitely can. I would say, yeah.
I mean, it's really. I mean, the great grandmother that also came up with olifenolia in a way. She also always said, "Put good in, get good out." And I think, I mean, it's such a simple statement, but it is so true, and to really not look at, what is profitable, but to look at, what is it that I want to do? I mean, we never start a project because we think of what's the bottom line going to be. We start projects because we think they're important, or because we want to try it, or because, in terms of food, because we tasted something, said, oh, we could do that. That's how our chocolate spread started, because, we're like, oh, why are our kids eating Nutella?
Yeah. Oh, it's so great. So I really thank you for the interview today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
I just hope that all the people continue to join you and the farm and your products and everything like that.
Thank you.